live. All right. Welcome to Upturned Table, and we're going to try something a little different tonight. The main purpose of playing the Trudvang Legends adventure storytelling board game was to explore the setting and learn the setting of Trudvang, because it's going to be released for Dragonbane coming up next year. So we thought, why don't we just go straight to the source and actually just read some passages from the pre-existing Riot Minds Trudvang Chronicles. So Riot Minds released a game with their own system with this setting, and when the board game was released by CMON, Trudvang Legends, originally called Trudvang Adventures, so it gets a little confusing in the early days, they did a collection of the RPG books. So the RPG books themselves originally appeared as slipcase volumes like these. Oops, it's the map like these. And so this is the Game Master's volume. There's a player's volume, and then there's setting and different information for some of the different spell users, magic users. So this is reorganized a bit, and some of the setting information is combined more into one chapter. So I thought we would use this source. This was a nice thing that they did. You don't really need, people have had limited success playing this actual system, even creating characters. But this does have a lot of background and setting. So I thought we would read through this, and if you followed any of the board game streaming, a lot of this will be familiar because the continent that we're on and many of the locations will be here, and the background that we'll read tonight will fill you in on a lot of the peoples and the lands, kind of their origins. And at the end, there's a little bit of an inspiration. They talked about where they took inspiration for each of the peoples from. So we'll read a little bit of that as kind of designer's notes at the end. All right. So here is the map that appears in the Trudvang Chronicles RPG. It looks a little different if you remember the board game. They redesigned it and I think compressed it a little bit so that you had fewer regions, because, the Dark Woods are huge and they were a single region on the board game. So I think they kind of compressed the continent a little bit. But you see Edgeland and the Stormlands and Midland, Nordland, Westmark, and Soj. And so we visited many of these places during the core game adventure in Trudvang Legends. But this is the continent as it was represented, and they did a nicer job. They changed the map a bit, but they did a nicer job with the lettering and presentation in the CMON version. This is just a reproduction of the Riot Minds version itself. All right, so I'll be recording this audio separately from this live stream, so we can I can release it in smaller pieces and even on the RSS for patrons if that works out, and it would be something interesting. So let's get started. So tonight, Trudvang, the lands and peoples of Trudvang, from Trudvang Chronicles. Trudvang is made up of the Stormlands to the east, Westmark to the west, and Midland between the two. There is also the archipelago of Soj in the south, where the elves make their home, and the wildland Nordland to the north, where trolls, wild folk, and all sorts of unsavory characters dwell in the shadows of the great Iron Mountains, and the deepest forests of them all, the Dark Woods. To the furthest north, there are only Hramtrisir, where the Hramtrisir roam, the giants, Hram giants. Few dare to venture. To travel across such a vast continent is no light matter. Merely traveling from city to city, or from forest to forest, can be the focus of an entire campaign. The wanderers and heroes who undertake such a magnificent trek will soon find that nature itself will prove the mightiest adversary of all. The languages of Trudvang. The long, complicated history of the world has shaped the languages spoken by its people today. By looking at who speaks what and where, it is possible to trace reflections of millennia of migrations, influences, and conquests. Futhark, the tongue of the dwarves, is the only language reputed to have remained unchanged through the millennia. Unmovable and stern as the people who speak it, the language is like the mountain stone, and runes in which it is written have remained the same since time immemorial. On the other hand, the elves today speak Eka, a beautiful musical language which has evolved from the Forneka, spoken by the legendary immortal elves of the Age of Dreams. The old language nowadays mostly is not used. It is a melancholic relic filled with sadness, a testimony of a time when the world was a better place to live. Bastjors, the trolls and giants, speak the dreaded Bastumal, whose carnivorous sound is painful for elves to listen to. However, there's a sound of another language the elves fear to hear more. Dragarthian, the ancient and obscure tongue of the worms, today known by only a few scholars. Dragons use it only speaking among themselves, and only about important topics, specifically since no other living thing or being is reputed to be worthy of listening to its sound, or even to try using it in their own impure mouths. The languages of men are even more different and numerous as Trudvang's peoples. One of the earliest tongues, definitively, was ancient Vyork, once spoken by the primitive heathens at the end of ages of the Iron Worm, and which, moving from the area around the Great Iron Tooth, spread everywhere. Wild Vyork, the language of today's wild folk, is certainly the most modern tongue, which is most similar to its ancient predecessors. Primitive and rough, this barbaric tongue seems to have been spread out of the mists of time, almost unchanged, just like the violent and savage culture who spoke it. Surprisingly enough, variants of Wild Vyork are heard in places as far apart and different as Arkland, Sylvan, and Fijal, a testimony to the brutal, common origin of all wild folk. On the other hand, Vyork is what ancient Vyork became in the east, in the lands which the Thronelenders called Ostenheim, and which now are the Stormlands. Its roots are in the tongue of the Crimors, or Wildbrons, but highly modified by the influence of seafaring broths. Today, even the few remaining tribes of the Argoths and Wildbron speak Vyork, as it has become the common tongue of the East. This language has a written form in runes, albeit the system is completely different and far simpler than the millennia-old runic system of the dwarves. Looking westward, the situation is different. Here the ancestors of the Virans spoke the ancient Rona, while Thronlandic, or more accurately Old Thronlandic, a Western human language influenced by Old Elven Fornica, was the most diffused and prestigious tongue of all, as its fame was definitively linked to the mighty, long-living kings of Throneland. Those two Western languages are dead today, but they mingled, intermixed, and evolved into Rona, a tongue which, due to Eldfolk influence, became the main language of Westmark, from Westmark to Central Midland, from Veranius to Majorn, including Carlon, Bisant, Ruanvilk, Bydland, and Figles. The strength of the Rona tongue obscured and replaced the ancient Vjork-related tongues. And the once wild and proud peoples, like the horse-riding Okis or Hanyurs, in the west, while the eastern descendants, who mixed with the Krimors, will speak Vjork, in Dranvolt and Argi. There is only 2 Midlander countries where Vjork is spoken, even among those who converted to the tenets of Nid. The reason behind this peculiarity is not just the proximity to Fjordland, but also the common origins from Kremor bloodlines. It is worth remembering that the Trudvang is vast. It's an enormous world, and all the above described languages should be considered more like language groups than tongues, which are perfectly homogeneous everywhere. The Vjork spoken in Wildlands will contain Argoth-derived words, which may sound like Wild Vjork, while Vjork spoken in Drenvelt will certainly have more Rona-inspired terms. Even so, both Vjork speakers would almost perfectly understand each other, even if regional variability will be clear to both. The same is true for the archaic tongues spoken in today's Throneland or the Rona spoken in the royal court of Majord. Certainly richer in Elven and Old Thronelandic words than the Rona spoken in Vistergolp, Silvtrodder, and Villano, which is more like the ancient Rona, spoken at that time, the time of Ciro Verte. Even so, all Rona speakers will understand each other, as well as recognize the specific differences. Furthermore, there are even rarer obscure languages. One of them is Estiak, a learned language derived from the wise men of the old times, as they were taught the old elven lore and tried to adapt it to their own human way of thinking. There is also the Fjordispal, an advanced poetic version of Vrok, which is used by Germanian holy books, albeit written in common Vrok runes. Finally, in a few and very remote corners of Trudvang, it is possible to find small enclaves speaking very ancient tongues, unrelated to any of the above-mentioned idioms, like the exotic and mysterious tongue of the Jorings of Dane. Nobody knows where these very rare languages and cultures came from, but they may well be relics of an old time, before the ancient Vork-speaking heathens spread throughout Trudvang, making the world become what it is today. Midland. Midland is, above all else, a land of great heroes and mighty deeds, a place sprung from legend and myth, where plains of high grass spread out as far as the eye can see, upon which wild horses roam, majestic and free. Griffins soar above the mighty mountain peaks and cut open the red sun in the sky as if it were an open wound. Rapids thunder forth and grow even wider as they slither across and around the hills and cairns that stand testimony to the long-lost warriors and kings of old that all Midlanders seek to join in glory. Midland is a place almost frozen in time, greater and wider than any other realm in Trudvang. A place where danger is connected with death, as it is with the chance for glory and great deeds. A place where skalds record and immortalize the people who led lives by the sword in search of the moment where all will be counted and they will go down in history for what they have done. It is an awe-inspiring place. Any other savage and civilized, unlike any other savage or civilized all at once. It is an awe-inspiring place, unlike any other, savage and civil all at once. caught between the Stormlands and the Vestmark, not only geographically, but also in spirit. To the east, the faith of the Eld tradition is strong, but from the west, the influence of Westmark and the old god, Gave, grow even stronger. As the religion unites the Stormlands, it divides Midland. Midland is also very fertile, considered to be the greatest farmland in all of Trudvang. Wheat and rye and man's harvest will determine his riches, and the greatest families and clans are often made by the land that they own and farm. So even Midland is iconic in its tradition of heroes and legends. Its true power lies within the earth, and sets it apart from other lands as a place of prosperity and great fertility. But, even so, the Midlander is defined by battle. Here all men and women are created equal under the sun as long as they can wield a weapon and use it to strike down their enemies. Courage and bravery are considered to be traits all great Midlanders must possess, and death by old age or sickness is considered a great dishonor. This is perhaps why most Midlanders welcome death in battle gladly, as it might be their chance to claim a glorious end. This has led many Midlanders to use their shields to deal blows instead of parrying them. However, no death is worth much unless a skald or squilde sings of it. The skalds are as revered as dimwalkers, the most common name of holy men among all the peoples of Trudvang. And they might be in other cultures as they hold the power over the people's destiny. Legends told by skalds have come to define Midland and its people, as many religions, gods, and systems of belief have sprung from them. In this fashion, most things are legendary and mythological in Midland. Beasts, people, objects, and poems all hold power and legacy. The Eld tradition. The Eld tradition is a complex The Eld tradition is a complex belief system that still rules over the eastern parts of Midland, while the western parts and Dronvelt in the east are slowly but surely being converted to the tenets of need. The rituals, culture, and so much of what the Eld followers believe and practice have their origin in what Malhuin Trollseeker and his Eld folk established in Monyord. However, that belief system succeeded in spreading over Midland, since its roots were much older than the age of prophets. The Eld tradition synchronized ideas hailing from both Thronelander culture and the numerous spirit-worshipping cults, which were spread over the hills, forests, and plains on all sides of the Great Iron Tooth. Since the time when men first appeared in the area during the late age of the Yarnworm, what started as a simple worship of the Hot, what started as a simple worship of the Hote has developed into patterns and myths and customs that are deeply connected with nature and the four seasons. The Eld tradition has evolved into worship of great deeds and battle due to the hostile climate of Midland. Griffins soar high in the sky, lindworms lurk in the marshes, and thorn beasts come down from the mountains to swallow people whole. The Eld tradition is centered around reverence of heroes and their accomplishments. All Midlanders grow up listening to the stories like those of the exiled prince Halloween Longlife, the first Eld folk, Melhuin Trollseeker, the mystic of the first king Majne, Jolja, the worm killer of Beidland, and Aradik, the conqueror of Argi. bravery in one's heart is the greatest trait that one can possess, and lone warriors and heroes often have more power and respect than kings and lords that hold great riches. The old hero kings who lived their lives by the sword before they rose to power are truly respected. One will often hear the songs of the skalds that a battle was won by a single hero or a beast was slain by a lone warrior. The greatest wish of a warrior from the Midland is to have a song or tale written about their deeds. To reach such status is the ultimate proof that you will live on forever. Not only are heroes revered within the Eld tradition, but so too are the weapons and objects they wield. They are inscribed, decorated, and given names and legends of their own. Items are often passed down from generation to generation and continue the legacy of family or clan. It is not uncommon that such a weapon or object will become more famous than the hero who wields it. People who set out to make names for themselves as heroes of Midland often seek such items. Eld followers are not organized in a uniform, well-organized church like the Tenets of Need, and its structure is almost non-existent, being even looser than that of the Gerbanis. Furthermore, the dividing line between secular lords, heroes, and dimwalkers is more blurred than it is in other lands, since heroic kings and chieftains only may have a role unknown in other religions. Even the terms for describing holy persons among the Eld followers are various. The word brood is the term most commonly used for the dimwalkers, but they are more heroes to be than formalized priestly figures, as in the Tenets of Need and Gerbanis. There are also the lairds, which are often clan and village chieftains, and the Malhuans, called after the ancient hero, are heroes who wander for a higher purpose or to fulfill the important oath. Broods, which are nearer to the Floras, take the other names like Curad, Leithenid, and Tirin. But these are rare these days, and the rarest of all is the Ardai, a hero so beloved by the Floras that he must not obey any earthly king. The Eld tradition recognizes the existence of old gods, but the vast majority of the ancient beings are nowadays mostly too far from men to be properly understood. As a consequence, the Eld folk religion is more based on the worship of dead heroes and of nature spirits known as the Floras, or creatures born in flowers. Some say that there are countless Floras, but 5 of them are major and most popular. Nineveh, the mistress of the lakes; Thanja, the lady of the forests; Maj, the spinner of fate; and Nima, the wind of the plains; and Morgu, the terrifying queen of the battlefields. Eld followers also practice archaic rituals unknown elsewhere, like the veneration of lindworms. They both offer victims to these dragons and hunt them when needed. As bearers of both fortune and disaster, lindworms are an essential part of the Eldish culture, of the Eldfolk culture, and they are linked with many stories of heroes. Some of the most prominent and renowned beings within the Eld tradition's mythology are the Wote and the restless wanderer, Oathwoke, the guardian of Oathwa, and Shurd, the lord of darkness and dragons. So Hote, the most famous of the old gods, the great wanderer, maker of the ancient tree Yggdrasil, and father of all mankind. Hote was the one who would not sit and hearkens, but instead not sit and hearken, but instead abandoned the other gods and spirits, and with his ravens and great spear wandered out into the world to experience it for himself. He is often depicted as a huge man, even though Midlanders seldom pray to or worship him directly. He loves humans most, as they are his creation, and he often concerns himself with their business, which he learns a great deal about through the raven's messengers. Othwok is the realm of heroes. Othwa is the realm of heroes and the kingdom of the fallen. Othwok is its undefeatable guardian. He takes the shape of a great white with a cuirass of skulls and a huge axe, or as a black lindworm that lurks in the shadows, in the mists between Othwa and Trudvang. He stands watch. He enters Trudvang only to retrieve the ones who have left Othwa, for no one has that right. He is the great warrior who will never meet He is the great warrior who will meet the fallen and judge them at the gates of Othwa. He is both feared and respected. Shurd. If Hote is the protector and guardian of humans, his son Shurd is the greatest enemy. Shurd is the Dark Lord and master of the great beasts such as dragons. He battled the gods in the Age of Dreams, and he later forged bindings of shadow to shackle humankind. He loathes all that is synonymous with light and life, and always seeks to thwart the prosperity of the world. Only dark and obscure cults dare worship Shurd today, as he is shunned by most people. The Midlanders' territories. This is a wide and ancient land, divided into countries and territories by nature and beliefs. An ancestral tradition of ringbreakers, an old title for kings, rules the region, but the heart of Midland is now disputed by opposing cultures. Manjord, this country's once larger borders are now confined between the fierce Ravelfjord's river to the troll-infested Volseruk forest and the mystic Miwar woodlands in the northeast. Manjord takes the name from the main city, the capital of the mightiest realm in Trudvang, where kings of legendary the Kolharn line still rules. This is the center of old folk culture and religion, where heroes and skalds are held in high esteem. The current great king, Althwain Kulhen, is almost 70 years old, but still controls with a firm hand all the warlords of Manjord, the 6 Spear Gothis, and all the lesser Field Gothis and Blade Gothis. This is a land of fortresses and cities, and they all obey the throne of Manjord. The venerable king never abandoned the old faith of Hote and the Floras, but he understands that his country is slowly transforming. Again, about 4 out of every 10 Manjords have converted to the tenets of need, and the Kolhwain kings have never been repressive towards this Western influence. Beidland. The land is pure wilderness, vast grass-covered plains, occasional tree scrubs, lakes, and the Havenridge, a series of hills and eskers, forming like waves over the incredibly fertile sea of the land. Beidlanders, mostly descending from the Okies, believe their country to belong to the flora named Nima, and they never surrendered to the tenets of need. The horse is important for Beidlanders. The horse as they mostly live as nomads to their lands. There are only 2 cities here, Outwind and Blot, followed on the bones of the Bloodfang, the white worm killed by Joa. Today, Blot is the multicultural city sited along an important route for the Soj to eastern Midland, and it is visited by Viran and Stormlander merchants alike. Dragon Forest. The ancient forest, once called Lothlinke by the elves, is a place of many mysteries. The ancient elven kingdoms of Tulis-Talava were once here, but it was destroyed by dragonfire aeons ago. Humans fear wandering the area, as they believe there is a gate to Othwa, somewhere in the mists among the trees. The failure of the Sixth Blood Crusade in the forest just reinforced that superstition. Argi. The independent farmers of Argi are organized in gromfans, groups linked by common ancestors, all competing for land ownership. All disputes are settled by the Kralj, who is not a king, but rather a judge, who summons council in Isenbrat every year. The current Kralj is Hengist II Bakrolas. The Broad Spear people, or Argi, are the main population. They are Cremors led by Aradik, the Conqueror, and who, mixing with the Eldfolk, stole the best lands from the forest. The Herald were originally Cremors too, but often mixing with the Hanirs, Okis, and Eldfolk. They adopted a semi-nomadic lifestyle. They are also the Rippers. They're also the Rippers, the pure-blooded Cremors, always prone to revolt. People in Argi are mostly Eld followers, although followers of the ancient Fjaturlaran heresy, mixing the cults of Hote and Gave, can still be found here. Argi is in fact the most isolated land, as all trade passes only through Hiverd, a strange mix between a huge market and an occasional settlement, where wagons and tents are always moving and changing. Dranveld. The tenets of need are strong among the inhabitants of Dranveld's coastland, where the faith was brought by the mighty Belosoth. This is especially true in Ilderbad, the seat of the most powerful king of Dranveld. The current king, Lid the Great, is the only Vrok-speaking monarch in the east to follow the tenets of need. Therefore, the Ovus has a special relationship with him. Dranveld and its share of minor kings and horse-riding nobles all subjugate to the king of Ildabad, who nominally rules everyone from his city to the border town of Eastvolt on the Darkwoods limit. The ancient Eld tradition was not completely abandoned in Dranvald. On the contrary, it is still quite strong in the countryside, and especially among the Highlander clans of Helgoland. These fierce warriors consider themselves independent of Ildabad. A few Stormlander merchants of the Storm Hansa also inhabit the southern coastline, having fortified the small harbor of Runbelt. The hinterland here is dominated by the Hornwife Forest and a wildwood infested with trolls, and according to some, even a spider god. Filges. This land of steep and lush plains, sometimes called Farfilges, was the core of the empire of the horse-riding Hanirs, a people open to dialogue and external influences, just as their land was enclosed by the Yimmergate and the Gunra Mountains, at whose feet dark forests prosper. Filges has always been the first natural raiding target for the wild folk of Sylvan. The Bults, in fact, have tried to conquer this country and its many rich salt mines for ages. It was during one of these invasions that the Majordian horsemen came to help and remained intermarrying with the locals. The Ild tradition is still strong here, as nobody cares about the neatest missionaries. Filges is not limited to a unified nation, but is divided into tribes, clans, and city-states, ruled by a loose collection of petty local kings and trading families. They all meet at the Filgeting, where descendants of Hanra, Okis, and Eldfolk all gather once every 3 years in Huat. This is the only major town in the country ruled by traders of the Hanir blood, and it rests atop a system of shiny caves rich in white gold, the salt which has attracted so many invaders throughout the centuries. Runvik. This land is fortified farms and very few towns. The peoples are organized around the concept of Hilkar, a collection of small farms spreading over the landscape and controlling the same countryside, all obeying a chieftain or council of elders. Vast tracts of land are uninhabited or were wasted by centuries of warfare and pillage. Due to its position as a crossroads between Midland and Westmark, the plains of Runvik have witnessed countless battles, including the most famous one, the Battle of the Five Spears. The tenets of Need has a firm hold on this country, as only a quarter of the inhabitants are Ild followers, and they are mostly clustered in the wildest northeastern part of the country. Hjortstige is the largest settlement in Runvik, although most of its ruins, having been pillaged countless times, its queen, or Tiskla, is traditionally advised by Nidist clergy and is considered to be the main ruler in Runvik, although her power is in reality pretty feeble outside Hjortstige. Muspelheim. In the wild Nordland, there is only one people who embrace a certain level of civilization, the dwarves of Tuvolgola. Steadfast and durable, like the mountains they live under, they do not allow themselves to be bothered or moved by arbitrary things or events, standing where they always were, unlike the humans that wage war or emigrate. For even the smallest reason, the sons of soot and stone value that which is lasting, that which remains, and those things that are as they have always been, like the mountains. This is perhaps because the dwarves have been here so long that some people even say longer than the elves. It is said and sung that the dwarves came from the sparks that were emitted from the shaper Bjorn struck when he struck his mighty anvil with his hammer and created the world. When those sparks hit the ground, they took the shape of worms, that slithered about and hid beneath rock and stone. Björn noticed the sparks and was fascinated by their transformation. He started to shape the worms and bestow them with consciousness, the power to craft, and a strong and sturdy soul. Ever since the moment when the worms became what we today call dwarves, there have been 3 types in Trudvang: the Buracha, the Björnika, the Grey Dwarves, and the Svards, the Troll Dwarves. Today, dwarves live in the underbelly of the world known as Muspelheim, maintaining unchanged this ancient tradition under the rulership of the Thuns and Storthuns, the equivalent of Jarls and Great Kings. They keep to themselves and hammer away by their burning loga furnaces, forging things of such might and beauty that ordinary folk cannot fathom the craftsmanship. But the dwarves, however stubborn, have no choice but to communicate with the outside world, and it is most often the Björnika that deal with traders of the southern Stormlands, or the parts of Midland that exist in the shadow of the great Iron Tooth. The Baraja keep to themselves and labor by the lava rivers of the deep chasms. They do not seek to communicate with or to understand others, and are perfectly happy to simply do that which they do best: craft. They spend so much time by the anvil and the loge furnaces that their very skin has evolved to withstand the heat. Baracha are the greatest crafters of all dwarves. The Svarda dwarves are sometimes called troll dwarves by common folk. This is because their immense size and strength and their more brutish appearance. These dwarves often labor as warriors, masons, or tunnel diggers, and lead lives of great unrest and weariness. This may have to do with the fact that until the age of the Iron Dragon, the Svarta were few in number and were very lonely folk. Thuldom. The dwarves of Muspelheim worship the mountain itself. They believe in the stone, in its inner workings, and the precious metals within. Holy dwarves are known as runesmiths, or thuls. They are the ones who hold sway over the mountains and the art of shaping it into things so precious and near divine that not a living soul in Trudvang could hope to mimic them. Thuls have learned the secret ways to study and refine mountains and its raw materials. This art is worshipped by all dwarves. The runesmiths can spend days, weeks, and even years finding the perfect materials and components for their divine craft. It is as if they seek precious stones and metals that were made by Björn himself, for the sole purpose of being used by the Thuls. This is by far the most important mission that the Thuls have in everyday lives of the dwarves. Certain minerals, gems, and ores have a single purpose. Some are meant for weapons, others for armor, houses, or tools. Not until a Thul receives a vision of what a certain piece of rock should be used for can it be worked by other dwarves. Such destinies can be as mighty as being the jewel in a king's crown, or as humble as being the step of a stairwell. It is the Kajati, the will of the mountain. When a Thul receives such a vision, they place a rune upon that rock, and its purpose is known to all then. Some parts of the mountain remain unmarked for long periods of time, sometimes entire ages. These mineral deposits and their purposes are unclear to the Thuls, and thus remain untouched. The dwarves have deep respect for such deposits, fearing what slumbering power resides within. And they avoid them until they are marked by a Thule. The dwarves do not know what events might be set in motion or what forces might be called upon if they were to dare tinker with such a rock. Therefore, entire cities can be constructed around a single block of stone or a deposit of minerals that has no known destiny. Dwarves know the names of many mysterious gods, like Yulk, the snake, fire-eyed Gupta, Brok the skillful, and Pezka the dark. However, they also avoid naming them, treating such entities only with superstition, and always fearing their wrath. Only the runes and the will of the mountain help the dwarves make sense of the world. Anything else is just useless. Borjorn. The great maker and shaper, Borjorn is believed to have created the dwarves and perhaps even the very mountains themselves. When he struck his great anvil with his mighty hammer, sparks erupted. From those sparks, worms appeared and crawled around his feet. The worms slithered away to dig nests and homes under the rock. Borjorn quickly grew fond of the worms, as he did all of his creations. He saw that they loved the rock and the soot and the mountain, and they seemed to have a connection with all these things. He gave them souls and hearts of their own, and the power to shape the rock that they loved so much. He also gave them the kingdom of Muspelheim, where the dwarves now dwell, deep in the underbelly of the world. The mountain. If there is one thing that is holy to the dwarves, it is the mountain itself. It is their home and the place from which they draw their power. Their entire culture is centered around the mountain, and the stone that makes up its shape. Therefore, the mountain is revered more than anything else in dwarven culture. When the dwarves speak about the mountain, they may refer to specific mountains or a wider supreme spirit dominating the whole of Muspelheim, or to the idealized concept of a mountain, or maybe to all of these things together. Elves and humans never understand, but the dwarves do not see contradictions in using the word in such a way. The mountain is all these things and even more. Nothing in the world makes sense for dwarves if not seen and analyzed in comparison to the mountain and its will, the Kujadi. In a world where nothing can be trusted, where ancient gods cannot be approached due to ancestral superstitions, where everything continuously changes, the mountain remains the most comfortable ideal for dwarves to trust in. The dwarves' realms. Muspelheim is an enormous underground world encompassing the whole of Trudvang. During the past millennia, the dwarves have established countless colonies, and it is impossible to list them all. What follows is a list of the main dwarven kingdoms, known by men, using human names, while the dwarven names are given in brackets. Trilheim, or Tovgoya. The most ancient and greatest of the dwarven realms span countless miles under the great iron tooth. Nobody knows how large Trilheim is, or how deep the dwarves have really dug, after so many millennia, since the underground empire is more a collection of countless subterranean regions rather than one single continuous place. Furthermore, Trilheim is nowadays a fractured realm, as the great Stormthune and the Bojornica dwarves, called Siloga Sura, blood of Adak, who got the title by force and treachery, has not managed to be recognized by a single legitimate authority. The upper levels, known as the Gidaski, are filled with mines, border settlements, and troll-infested areas. The middle levels, or Tvolgorod, is where the great city of Novokorsk rests, the traditional center of power, where the great Thun sits on his throne in a magnificent chamber of Norg. The lowermost levels of the Niflung are inhabited by mostly the Buracha smiths who dared to build their fortified colonies in the vastness of these dark and mysterious caverns, where spirits beings older than Trudvang itself wander. Umergate Mountains, or Brockmuscurum, the once mighty realm, is now divided among the at least 7 major Thuns and countless lesser leaders. Both Bojornica and Buracha breed. Civil war and competition is now constant, as they dream of being recognized as the sole heir of the Grigorj Brokmusk, the mythic first great Thun of this realm. Dwarven seers known as Eagle-Thuns have all had discordant visions about what to do. Something unnatural and dark rests in these depths on this kingdom, and even if nobody ever has seen it, it may be the supernatural source of much strife. The Jute Mountains, or Dalmatsaba. This once important kingdom is almost completely destroyed as sea waters invaded the tunnels. Dalheimers almost ignore that a few dwarves still live there, as dwarves have always avoided them. Grunya Mountains, Dorg Ramitza. The realm of the 5 halls exists in the perpetual state of warfare against the trolls, which have invaded its lands. 3 cities have been lost centuries ago, and since that time, dwarves have been waging an eternal war against the invaders. Erzmir. This is the huge chasm opening on the plains of Sylvan. The wild folk have fear approaching it, even if they know the area to be rich. Borjonika dwarves have built a vertical kingdom in its chasm walls, and their main products are coal and possibly the most beautiful gems in Trudvang. Glitam, or Glitzamokulji, today's second mightiest dwarven kingdom in Muspelheim, lies in the middle of the Fjordgand Ridge. It was found millennia ago by exiled Brojanika dwarves of the blood of Trudruk, who were destined to die in the endless dark chasms. On the contrary, they prospered, causing wrath and envy in Trilheim, and conquered the greatest natural deposits of the Glitzerjas, a magical crystal which emits light and which are traded everywhere in the underground world. Happiness cannot last forever in this world, as almost half a millennia ago, the southern half of Glitham was conquered by the Bjorgiv, or blood maw, as it is called, as humans call it, the largest yarnworm ever seen since the ancestral times. The dwarves still dream of retaking what has been taken from them, but no new army has dared attacking the dragon for a long time. Grey Deep, or Grunkovoldar. Located in the wild Trowbridge Mountains, this ancient and once powerful realm of the Borjornika dwarves is now divided into 5 different separate holdings without a single central authority. Grey Deep was once the main rival of Trilheim, but centuries of warfare over the depleting Mitraka veins have dethroned that unity. Nowadays, Thuns rarely fight But their separated realms are divided by miles and miles of underground tunnels, ancient holdings filled with treasure and, unfortunately, troll tribes, which are very numerous in these mountains and which have conquered some parts of their kingdoms. Stormlanders covet the marvelous items crafted by the dwarves here, but only very few of them are traded, and then for a very steep price. Sutbrand, or Muspelnisk, is the only fully Brutja dwarf kingdom, and it's sited on the northeast on the northeast of Trudvang, hidden somewhat between the Great Iron Mountains and the western wildland. A master smelter, Velder Blood of Angor, and not a great Thun, rules this proud kingdom, whose entrance is forbidden for all strangers, especially if they are human. The Brudja here are masters in the Mitraka crafting and have built their holdings on the ruins of a much older dwarven kingdom, the legendary Sparklor, or Lovlingjika, whose deep halls were sealed with powerful runes after the invasion by mighty worms called Unhorvin. The blood and ambition of Suka the Conqueror ran deep through the Brutja veins here, and sooner or later vengeance will be brought upon the wildlanders who dared to resist the dwarves so many centuries ago. Thordun. Let me get a drink here. All right. Thordun, the United Kingdom of the Borjanika and the Borjata dwarves, located between the Wistergalt and Thorkol, has been almost destroyed by a catastrophe a few centuries ago, when poisonous gases infiltrated the tunnels. From that time, the dwarves have lived mostly on the mountain surface and have tried to recover and protect what they could of their lost treasures. Nordland. Nordland is untamed wilderness. Its main feature is the Great Iron Mountains, or Hjarngard, and it is the greatest landscape in the far north, and stretches from the shorelines of the west to the cold forests of the east. In the midst sits the mountain range of the Great Iron Tooth, or Jornganskilin, that splits the land in half with like a great tooth. Its peaks so high and inaccessible that it is not even the greatest giants or well-traveled dwarves have managed to tame or master them. Like a great wall, the range stretches across all of Trudvang and protects the world from the dark forces of the unexplored north. Nordland is home to the legendary and mythological forest of Darkwood, which is known far and wide as a dangerous and treacherous place. Under the cover of its gnarly and twisted branches, tribes of trolls and worm-like dragons keep secrets untold, unfathomable to humans and dwarves. A few fierce and independent tribes of Korpakali elves live here, separated from any contact with civilized settlements or the southern coasts. The Great White, also known as Isvida, or the Great Ice Plains, is also considered part of Nordland, a region of icy plains where no human, dwarf, or elf dwells, or at least this is what most people in Trudvang believe. Here the land is so cold and dark and ancient that it is nearly uninhabitable. The snow lies so deep and cold that most people cannot summon the strength to travel through it. The barrier made by the mountains reaches so high and so ice-clad that no explorer could hope to climb them. Many brave adventurers lie buried beneath the ice and snow, slain not by foe but by weather. Here the great frost giants, the Hurmtusiren, roam the landscape and build great castles of ice. Here the wind bites the skin like 1,000 icy daggers and moves great mounds of snow with each fury, that some say Stormy himself seeks to subdue the landscape. The Great White is a true domain of the wild. Nordland is so vast and that so many people and creatures call it home, including dragons, wild folk, trolls, and many others. But when people talk about Nordland, most speak of 2 kingdoms, one above ground and one below. Arkland is the name of the kingdom in the western Yarngand, where the wild arks roam with their horrid thorn beasts. Tervogola and Tralheim is the kingdom beneath. Beneath the mountains in Muspelheim, where the dwarves of soot and stone dwell. The wild folk are a barbaric and untamed people that live all across Nordland and beyond the wildest corners of the world, from the deep forests and inaccessible mountains of Stormlands to the coasts of Sylvan, and the war-ravaged lands of Thorkall in the west. They are often viewed as unsavory characters, with a nature more like that of a beast than of a human. They view themselves differently and call themselves Hulpor, or the wild-born. Comprised of smaller groups and peoples connected by their savage ways and culture. They include tribes like the Amors, the Bults, the Kondavs, and the Arks. Wild folk live in hidden places that others find hard to access. They dwell in deep forests, high in the mountains, and in abandoned hill forts and cairns, far from watching eyes of others. Their way of life is barbaric and primitive, and they value strength and conflict as the only true meanings of life. Most wild folk live like nomads, moving from one place to another without settling for too long in any one spot. They also have lived together, held together by Harmiges, the dark faith. Harmiges is the dark and barbaric faith practiced by the wild folk and the trolls of Nordland. The backbone of the religion is simple strength. Followers believe that the soul has power and that within every living creature resides its strength and might. They believe that this soul can be controlled and whipped into submission and in the end consumed. When you kill a body in which its soul resides, that soul and all its power will be transferred to the one that struck the killing blow. Those who practice Harmiges worship violence, battle, lust, bloodlust, death, and chaos. To be strong and hold command over others are awe-inspiring traits in the religion. The wild folk and trolls that follow Harmiges have started many a war and slain many foes in the belief that by doing so they grow stronger. This is also why many wild folk, trolls, barbarians, and other evil creatures don the skulls and remains of their slain foes, not only to display their power, but also to enhance it. Because of this, Harmiges is often connected with cannibalism. The practitioners of Harmiges completely lack any resemblance to a formalized hierarchical religion structure, such as their dark religion is directly connected to tribal and primitive ways of life of the wild folk shamans, and it can be known by many obscure names: the Arkolja, the Honajor, and the Thowats, which all mean the same: coercers of the spirits. The difference between religious and secular authorities is often blurred, if it exists at all, since many dim-walkers become chieftains using their roles in the dark faith, claiming a commonality of identity in the specific with a specific dark god. The most prominent gods in the Harminges are Gelti, the dark mother, Vingan, the giant, and Mastru, the deceiver. Gelti. One can say that the goddess Gelti is the aspect of life for those who follow the dark traditions of Harminges. She is the great devourer and dark mother. Gelti will give life and take it away, as she eats from corpses of the dead and then gives birth to new life from her womb. She is heavily connected with the earth and all that grows, and also all which withers and fades away. Sometimes female dimwalkers take the title Gelti if their fertility and dark aspects give them authority. Vegan, the leader and destroyer. Vegan often is depicted as a giant wearing a bone mask. Those who wish for power in battle and victory may often make sacrifices to him. His great strength comes from his size and brawn, but primarily from the wailing souls he gathers and consumes as he treks across Trudvang. Violent dimwalker chieftains sometimes assume the title Vegan and are also often masters of warfare. Mastru. The master of lies and deception, the great deceiver. Mastru is an untrustworthy god, poorly thought of and often depicted as a slender and crooked man with a ram's head. He holds the power of falsehood and truth, and since no one can truly know the ways of Mastru or how he wills things, no one trusts him. However, it is impossible to ignore him since he holds sway over luck, and those who cast him aside often find their luck failing them. Dimwalkers who assume the role of the trickster in a tribe sometimes assume the title Mastru. The Wild Folks' Lands. The fierce bearers of wild folk culture are spread throughout Trudvang, mostly inhabiting border areas avoided by civilized people, living a violent and savage life, which is a relic of long gone times when humans were more like ferocious beasts, surviving amidst an unforgiving nature. Arkland. The northwestern side of the Great Iron Tooth is the home of the savage Arks, whose feral culture is spread among the high mountains and deep valleys. The bloodthirsty Arks are born to fight and kill, as they live for only waging wars. Due to their cruel fame, they are often hired by unscrupulous warlords as mercenaries. Albeit their ferocity and untrustworthiness are well known, Arkland is not a united country, as their tribes are divided among different leaders, called Bloodsworn or Warsworn. Their tribal economy is based upon slaves taken as captives from their other nations. They use them to harvest and treat the thorn root, an intoxicating drug on which Ark culture is based. The Arks are also known to breed and ride the flying animals known as thorn beasts, these whose ferocity is feared everywhere in Trudvang. Fjall. The Amurs live in the barren northwest, among cold plains and grim forests, said to be inhabited by demons. Orally transmitted myths suggest that the Amurs' ancestors once lived a more civilized lifestyle before the great city of Amur was razed to the ground by the Hurmtursirs, the ice giants, from the great ice plains about 2,000 years ago. Constantly at war against countless troll tribes, the Amurs are ruled by warriors called Anhara or Anharis. The strongest among them ride tamed garms, wear bear pelts, and display gruesome body parts as trophies of their tortured enemies. The town of Amhurir, also known as Stormhafen, is inhabited by Stormlander colonists who came here 500 years ago, due to their influence, many Amurs have been converted to a dark version of Gurbanis, worshipping the god of chaos. The Anyurs have relationships with the dwarves of Gildham, as they produce coal for them. Thorkal. The volcanic country is incredibly dangerous, an incredibly dangerous place to live, having been shaped so, according to local lore, by the wrath of Yarkala and worshipped by the locals as the Fire Lady of Logi. Muspel Jotun and Logoworms, earthquakes and earthquakes are common here. Wow. The vegetation is sparse and poisonous, except for the animals and the men who were bred in Thorkal. The only river here is the Yargal's tongue, whose waters are warm due to the geothermic phenomena. Many troll tribes wander its banks, while giant snakes swim through its perilous waters, which can be crossed only by using bridges. Only the beautiful Orkhelm forest seems to have been spared by the Tharkol's curse, although this may be due to the presence of the elves and the Yidras. The wild men who live in this country, the Thorkols, paint their dark-skinned bodies with ash and charcoal white, and dye their spiked hair red. The fire priestess, the Orla, lead these bloodthirsty nomads, who have always been incredibly resistant to any attempt by Nidist missionaries to convert them. Only the Vitner cursed runes of Goldum, illuminated by the eternal flame of their middle, attest that civilized lifestyles were once known, even here. Vicentia. Many rivers cross the land, like the Vitna River in the west, and long elaborate water courses which spread out from the end of the great Ravelford, forming the incredibly vast delta here. The never-ending swamps of Vicentia are plagued by eternal mists and, according to many, ancient dark Vitner curses and demons. Many are stories about what the fog hides, ancient dwarven ruins, or even a place known as Stonghard, a gateway to the Dimhall. And the Ovis has proclaimed an edict banning all the faithful from entering Vicentia. Only the Boglanders live here, a breed of incestuous savages whose filthy huts are built on poles. Many scholars consider Boglanders to be even more animalesque than other wild folk. Physical deformities are common due to the inbreeding, as well as a gift for mastering the dark Vitner. They do not follow Hamingas, but an odd cult focused on worshipping their ancestors' bones and snakes. The Havma forest has grown in the moist landscape. Here one can find rare troll breeds, especially adapted to aquatic life. The only port in Vicentia is the poor Dalheimer colony of Dalefish. The westernmost border of Vicentia has a few civilized towns like Peaceville and Byzantine, mostly inhabited by Westlanders with trading interests along the Vitna River. However, these settlements have recently declined in prosperity due to the spreading of plagues and the numerous attacks of the Rawbritters, evil outlaws from Vistergolp. Sylvan. The savage buttes of Sylvan are reputed to be the best warriors in Trudvang. They claim to descend from both the mythic hero called Hjorn the Great and the huge female bear known as Rake. Sylvan is a barren rocky land, framed by the dragon forest and stormy seas. Furthermore, even in the muddy waters of the Black River, it hosts a variety of fish. Most of them are not very nutritious. This economy paucity is the reason why Bülts have invaded their neighbors countless times throughout the millennia, always attempting to expand their holdings to find access to new resources. These bloodthirsty Bült armies are feared as the invading force may go without sleep for many nights due to the heavy consumption of Tunglisdrug. Bülts have honed their skill at warfare so much that even Viren knights or Stormlander berserkers have occasionally come here to learn or refine their fighting arts. Bülts are not shipborne people, but they have built a small harbor town in Vod, where Stormlander shipwrights were hired to build the best vessels used by the Bülts to sack Dalheim and Dranvelt. Sylvan is not a unified country, being divided into 3 smaller kingdoms, whose borders continuously shift as constant war evolves. Soj. It is known by all people on Trudvang that the elves live on Soj, an archipelago far to the south in the stormy Althis Ocean. They came from beyond the rim of Trudvang, where everything is dark and cold and silent. Like spears of burning starlight, they blasted down upon the surface of the world with their gods and makers, the Vanir. When the elves and the Vanirs came to Trudvang, many things had already been shaped and crafted, but this new people of starlight came to grow and make many things of their own. They laid seeds in the earth that soon blossomed into forests and deep and enchanted, and thus together with their gods, they created much of the world that we know today, including their home, Soj. They made it a place of untamed nature, unlike many of the places of Trudvang. The stormy Althis Sea smashes against their jagged sea rocks that rise so high that those who have never seen them could not fathom their enormity. The forests are so deep, and the gnarly dwarf pines grow so tightly next to each other upon dark Lichtgub moss that not even the most skilled adventurer can hope to traverse them without risking becoming lost forever within. The land has been allowed to become like this since so few humans have settled upon Soj. Apart from the island of Dalheim, ruled by the Stormlanders, and parts of Idras, settled by the Thornlanders, elves rule supreme on Soj. They do not interfere with nature. They do not farm the land or cut down trees for fuel for furnaces. No, they live in harmony with the land, and they do not stay in one place for very long, avoid harming the flora around them. Like nomads, they move from place to place, always seeking to uphold the balance of nature. To understand who the elves are today, one must understand their history and their relationship with the gods, the Vanirs. For the time of prosperity and beauty would not last for long on Soj. The worms, dragons, came from the blackened pits and spread their dark wings to take Trudvang as their own realms of chaos. The elves and Vanirs rushed to defend their creation and defy the dragons. The two battled side by side, the Vanirs seemingly unscathed by dragonfire, and together they turned the tide and held back the oncoming darkness. So it was that one day the elves went to do battle, and the Vanirs did not join them. The elves were abandoned by their makers and had to face their foes alone. The Vanirs watched from afar as many elves fell to the fire of the dragons, hiding in the shadows. And so in the end, the elves paid a mighty price for their hard-won victory against the dragons. When the elves sought the Vanirs to ask why they had turned their backs on their peoples in their people's hour of need. The gods were not there anymore. The Vanir had left Trudvang and returned to the cold darkness whence they came. Unable to follow their gods, the elves could do nothing but watch the stars grow ever smaller in the night sky as the Vanir drifted further and further away. And so the elves were left to themselves. They wandered, unsure what to do with themselves now that the Vanir were gone. Soon they found that they were beginning to grow old. Time had caught up with them, for when the Vanirs left, they took with them the elves' immortality. The elves began to die, as they had never done before. Generation by generation, their bloodline grew thinner and thinner, and the lives of elves grew shorter and shorter. From this almost cataclysmic change, two groups began to take shape: the bright Ilmalani and the dark Korpikali, the star elves and the dark elves. The two people were divided in their view of the gods. The dark elves cursed the Vanirs and raised their fists in anger toward their makers that had left them, vowing never again to acknowledge the gods or call upon them. The star elves, however, sought to understand the gods and why they left Trudvang. They view this time as a trial that they might be meant to overcome, so they must persevere and not lose faith. The Ilmalani make up the majority of elven kind in Soj, and very few of them wander across the southernmost warmer forests of Trudvang. On the other hand, the Korpikali are more commonly found in the darkest forests of the north, especially the immense and dreaded dark woods. But they are also present in the copperwoods in the southern part of Edgeland. There are myths about other rare kinds of elves in Trudvang: the mysterious Talviaka, the Frozen Ones, or the immortal Norim elves, reputedly descendants of the Nor Imolin, or the First, the closest to the Vanir, but also their descendants, the immortal Iron Elves, of which even less is known. Scholars believe that those ancient bloodlines, as well as many others, were extinguished long ago during forgotten eons, leaving only the two most known kinds of elves wandering the lands of the world. Very few immortal elves remain on Trudvang from the time of the Vanirs, but they can be found, if only in dreams and visions. They are the relics of an era which is long gone, and whose perfection is bound not to return to Trudvang. Toikoloke. Toikoloke is the name for the divine practices learned by the elven stargazers and priests, though the elves call them the high gifts after the high gods. Those who master the gifts are called Ilhana. Ilhana decipher the stars with the help of their star harps in an attempt to contact the departed gods, the Vanir. But by doing so, they learn the ways of the gods, and what trials they have placed upon the elves, and how the elves might again walk in the bright starlight. Some elves decipher the stars to understand current events, to draw power, to gain advice on what to do next, or to simply meditate and calm their senses. The Vanirs and the Stars. When the elves arrived in Trudvang, they shot down upon its surface like great spears of starlight, with their gods and shepherds, the Vanirs. Together the elves and Vanirs made many a thing of great beauty and magnificence, and they brought into existence deep forests, roaring rapids, chirping birdsong. But the elves' hour of need came, when the dragons of soot and fire marched out from their deep pits to do battle, and the Vanir were not there. The elves had to endure this great war alone, and even though they stood as victors when the end came, they paid a mighty price. Alone and confused, the elves wandered the surface of Trudvang. Some shunned the Vanirs and turned to the deep forests, and the others wanted to understand the gods. The elves believe that the stars that shine upon the night sky are, in fact, of the Vanir's drifting into the void, are signs of the Vanir's drifting into the void. The ones who seek to decipher the patterns of the stars to understand the Vanir's are called Ilhana. By using their star harps, they can know of the gods coming closer or drifting further away, and perhaps what their intent is. Soj Islands. The Soj Archipelago is known especially for the elves, albeit they are not the only inhabitants. Not including Dalheim, which is culturally part of the Stormlands. There are many main islands in Soj, but the Althus Ocean is also filled with countless minor islands. Oskla. This is the sacred island. Access is in fact strongly prohibited, as the elves actively enforce this ban. It is here that the dwarven hero Fuldorov Skilshov killed an enormous yarnworm, only to be later killed by the elves, triggering in a way a millennia-long enmity. Hirgrim, a vast forest made up of deadly and charred trees, lies in the northern part of Oskla. According to the elves, dragonfire has been in action here, as nobody knows what threat lies in its center. Dalheimers have even tried to build houses on the island, but their colony failed, and only ruins remain. Samia, the largest of Soj's islands, hosts the last surviving elven city from the Age of Stars, the holy Valkalinen, lying amidst the beautiful Volturus forest. Valkalinen is a city like no other in Trudvang, as the houses are built hanging from trees and are connected by bridges. Samia is the first place seen by the Vanir and elves when they arrived in Trudvang, and also the site of the first battle against the Logoworms. The land is filled with beautiful natural sights. Sacred springs are everywhere. Trees here are taller and more magnificent than anywhere else, while flowers are more beautiful, and the soil is more fertile. A few trolls are reputed to live in the Poyata Mountains, albeit more peaceful and friendly by troll standards. Hunting grounds are incredibly rich, and the elves enjoy them. Everything is perfect in Samia, as it came out of a dream, almost always reflecting the happiness which was experienced during the early age of dreams. There were a few isolated ruins of old human settlements built by Thronlanders and others, but they are all deserted these days as their human inhabitants died long ago. Edras. The Thronlanders of old times founded two towns here, Edron and Uwol, receiving land from the elves, and they are still ruled nowadays by Thronlandic law and traditions. Thronlanders and elves have been living together in harmony here for centuries. The Pohata forest is deep and dense, and it is the home to elves who like to wander around the island in a nomadic lifestyle. The Tring Mountains are impressive, even if they are not the tallest mountain range in Trudvang. They contain Stalik, a small colony of Burata dwarves who try to avoid both Thronlanders and elves. The Stormlands. From the wild folk of the north and the west, there came a people that today are known as the Stormlanders. These grizzled and hardy folk, bound by their traditions and customs and faiths in the great storm, live and do battle against the forces of nature that seek to overthrow their settlements in the eastern parts of the world, known as the Stormlands. The Stormlands is the most iconic and most iconic and wild land that often comes to mind when thinking about Trudvang. With roaring rapids, deep and untamed forests, snowy mountain peaks, and treacherous alpines, it is a hard land where nature still rules with a greater power than any other part of the world. Here one lives in close contact with nature, both in spirit and in labor, as there is no other choice for the people who have decided to live in such extreme environments. The summers are short but fruitful, and the winters are long, barren, and dark. It is religion, above all else, that binds the Stormlands together as one. Before Gurbanes came to be adopted by the Stormlanders, most folk simply worshipped loosely connected nature deities and their forefathers. No raid, ruler, or common cause was so great that it would unite the peoples of this harsh land. In the end, it was the god Stormy, the blood gifting and the belief in the great storm that united the Stormlanders as one people. Many warriors of the Stormlands shave their heads after their first killing, and keep on doing it throughout their lives, while others, especially among the Wildbrons, keep wild, long manes. Stormlanders love wielding broad axes, and their frenzied rage is so great that some liken them to the vicious wild folk of Nordland. The Stormlanders are, of course, more civilized, even though they are descended from such folk. The borders of the different countries that make up the Stormlands are loosely defined. They change, expand, decline as new jarls and chieftains rise to power. Jarls, shield jarls, sword jarls, fylk jarls. Many are the names of the Stormlander chieftains, and their powers and titles change as their communities are conquered or expanded. No single king can rule over all these fiercely independent warriors, and even the pater's sole religious authority is often questioned, as skirmishes break out here and there. Land is taken, lost, and then taken again. It is often said that the Jarl's land is no greater than that which his sons can successfully claim. Even so, the Stormlands is clearly made up of these countries: Wildland, Vortland, Edgeland, Finheim, Nod, Dane, Julhart, and Dalheim, an island closer to the elven archipelago of Soj, but ruled by men, nonetheless. The Stormlands is home to the legendary forests of Wildheart. Many years ago, these peoples arrived in what is today known as the Stormlands. These are today known as Kremers, Broths, and Wildbrons. A fourth later group, known as the Agraths. They settled here and lived off the lands. Eventually, they started to mix together and transform into what today is known as Stormlanders. And the people have traits from all of these groups. Something of these ancient tribes still exists in small enclaves throughout the Stormlands. There are, for example, large settlements of Wildbrons that remain, though they are often frowned upon or even resented by common folk. It is not uncommon that the Jarls or chieftains will hire Wildbrons to boost their fighting forces, as these tribes are known for their rage and bloodlust. It is also not unusual for these tribes to break loose, and they are often instigators of many conflicts throughout the Stormlands. The religion of Gurbanes primarily binds the Stormlands together as one land where Stormy, the Allfather, rules the people in their everyday lives. Lives that are imbued with myth and tale of heritage, a culture of fertility and sacrifice, and a deep reverence for nature. The Stormlanders are heavily shaped by their somber environment that they live in. They are hard, resilient, steadfast, and deeply traditional people. It is perhaps because of that the Stormlanders are deeply wary of magic, and that which they cannot understand. Combat, axe, shield, and sword are things that are easy to wrap one's head around. Some Stormlanders might be able to fathom being given powers by nature and excuse me. Sorry. Some Stormlanders might be able to fathom being given powers by nature and Stormy after a blood gifting, but magic woven and used as a weapon is deeply troubling and mysterious to these people. This has led the Stormlanders, being a superstitious folk, who prefer that which is tangible and quantifiable. Gurbanis. Most Stormlanders worship the great god Stormy and the deities that live by his side. Stormy, the Allfather of the religion that has been given the name of Gurbanis, after the original prophet Gerban Hrungnir. The great faith proclaimed by Gerban never was a monotheistic religion like the tenets of Nid, but it is rather a complex mythological system whose roots may even be older than Gerban himself, and which is permeable to the inclusion of other local and sometimes prehistoric cults. Many Stormlanders, in fact, expand their belief beyond the devotions of Stormy and worship their forefathers, the moon, and other nature deities, like the wolf cults and the bear cults. There are even Stormlanders, there are even stories about ancient dark death and life deities of the Broths to still be worshipped in some, although this may not be true, and the stories exist just to hide the dark, secret rituals held in honor of the Hilvergilft by the fallen and desperate people hidden in the darkness of the forest. The religion of Gurbanis is one that is imbued with the rite of sacrifice. Stormlanders make blood gifts to the gods and to Stormy himself to wish for a great harvest, a merciful winter, or even to save a dying person from their fate. The greater the favor you ask from the gods, the greater you must sacrifice. A firstborn son is considered to be one of the most powerful things to sacrifice. A blood offering is usually held at a ritual spot where a blood pool has been raised, and the offering is drained of its blood by a sacrificial blade. This blood is then drunk by a priest and showered over the others who take part in the blood gift using the blot broom. All the Gurbanians, in theory, respect the supreme religious authority, the Pater of Vortland, and are expected to pay at least some homage to the Gurbanian Dimwalkers, the Stormkelts, and their superiors, the Breakers. In reality, the religious structure is not so tightly established and evenly organized throughout the Stormlands as the Church of Nid is in Westmark. The Pater has a direct and supreme power in Vortland, where Breakers are more important than Jarls or chieftains, but the religious structure in Dane or Junhart or in most of the rest of the Wildland is much looser, even if they have their own share of Stormkelts in those countries. The diffusion of Gurbanis' clergy is anything but homogeneous. Larger Stormlander settlements have monumental stav churches where Stormy is venerated by rituals overseen by scores of high-ranking Stormkelts, with many specialized Stormbarling, poles for sacrificing. However, most small villages and isolated farms have to wait whole seasons before proper rituals are held, since they have to share the same poor and wandering Stormkelt. This is a further reason why cults and rituals more ancient than Gurbanis itself are especially common in the countryside, especially in nations further from Vortland. Gurbanis is, more than anything else, the religion of the Stormlanders, and not something to be spread by converting non-believers. Gurbanis is the reason why all Stormlanders feel themselves to be part of the same ethnic identity, even if some of them do not respect Germanus at all. There are a few instances where Germanus had spread to non-Stormlander, for example, Fjall, but this is rare, and the ancient beliefs are often perverted and changed. Those who follow Germanus view the universe as a great chaos storm filled with evil and eldritch forces that seek to penetrate the world. With Trudvang in the eye of the storm, when a person dies, they are cast into this great storm and must take heart and be strong to navigate the maelstrom without being consumed by its evil power. If they succeed, they will find their way to the great green country, where Allfather Stormy rules. But the storm must be braved over and over again, for often Stormy will venture into the darkness of chaos and battle the forces that reside there. Those who have managed to reach him will accompany him into the storm and do battle by his side. Therefore, it is not necessarily a bad thing to die young and strong in the Stormlands. Germanus has a great number of gods which are split into three categories: Stormessirs, the storm gods; Hjörvlift, the chaos gods; and the Venerlift, the death gods. Stormlanders usually worship only the Stormessirs, which include not only Stormy but the other gods like his mother, the wise Windina, and his half-brother Inken, his son Jorn, and his daughters, the beautiful Sunve and the vengeful Tyrd. Stormy, the Allfather, god of wisdom, might, and wind. His chainmail is blackened by the fire of 1,000 worms, and his strength is supreme. Stormy is the main god in Germanus' pantheon, and the god that is most tightly connected with this barbaric and ancient religion. A mighty black ring is the symbol revered by all those who follow Germanus. In fact, on his arm, Stormy bears a mighty ring of iron called Gutra that empowers him with the strength of 1,000 dragons and 1,000 giants. And so, when he thrusts his mighty spear into his foes, the very fabric of reality tears. Or trembles. Trembles. None can defy the physical might, and with it defends the weak. He defends the weak and the ones that pay tribute to him. He dwells in the midst of the great chaos storm and gathers his warriors to join him in the final clash when the powers of chaos must be subdued. Jorn, the aspect of night, the son of Stormy, the god of those who dwell in the shadow. Jorn is night incarnate. He slithers and weaves around the world, stepping from creature to creature without ever being noticed. He can never be sure where his motivations lie and what his true intent really is. He is cold and cunning and can never be captured or caught, even when he battles other gods. For when he wraps the cloak of Fjordvrantir around himself, he is abstract, unfathomable as darkness himself. Enkin, the eyes and ears of Stormy, he who sees all, he who on the final day will call upon the warriors of the storm. Enkin, the god of nature and the protector of animals, is sometimes seen as a great bear. He observes the small things and the great things in the world and is constantly watchful. He at any time, Enkin can shift into a beast or animal that he wishes, and he can thus be anywhere and see anything. He is the aspect of freedom and vigilance. The Stormlanders' territories. The lands once known by the ancient Thronelanders as Ostheim is now divided into a mosaic of people who all identify themselves as Stormlanders. Dalheim, the youngest of the Stormlands, was founded a few centuries ago by the Edgelanders adventurers who landed where the city of Hjörvigel now stands. As the largest human settlement on the island, most of the rest of Dalheim is uninhabited and dominated by spectacular natural features. Like the monumental Jute and the Helak mountain ranges and the wild Vislat River. Elves once lived here, but nobody knows why they left. A few dwarves still wander the semi-drowned underground kingdom of Dalmatsba, but they are avoided by the Dalhammers. Dane. The barren land of the old volcanic plains, marshes and sparse forests is where the people known as the Yorings were pushed by some ancestors of the Stormlands. East of the Troll Ridge Mountains, the Yoring are an ancient, treacherous breed, still preferring to use the use of bronze and use of sorcery and intrigue and conflict. They worship an alien pantheon of strange gods unknown to others, and a few Stormlanders in Dame inhabit some rare settlements on the coast, trading and often fighting with the Yorings. Junghart, this land, south of the steep Troll Ridge Mountains, hosts the ruins of a fallen troll civilization, which nobody knows how to interpret. Junghartens are a breed of large-limbed and yellow-eyed brutes who have an exaggerated hate and fear of any Vitner weaving arts. Most people believe that these Stormlanders have too much troll blood in their veins and that they are ruled by Draughts, chieftains who all belong to the same great lineage. Julhart is a land of steep coastlines and occasional beaches, whose sand is a rusty brown in color. Many Jorhartians are raiders and pirates, and they compete with the sea wolves of the Heartpike Islands. Redborg is a decently large city and has a large harbor too, as it lies on the common stop in the trading routes to Meatland. Edgeland. The country is a collection of jarldoms inhabited by the descendants of Wildbrons, Kremers, and Broths, who colonized the coastland surrounding the mystic Wildheart Forest. They mostly obey the three shield jarls of Saga, Trollmark, and Altwind, which form the Council of Edge. The few pureblood clans of Wildbrons still inhabit the inner part of the Edgelands Peninsula, hiring their swords to the best payers among the various competing jarls. Elves, possibly of the Corpicoli breed, are said to still live in the Copperwood Forest, but they mostly avoid contact with humans. The city of Saga is the most important settlement of Edgeland, where the Council of Edge meets, and also one of the main ports along the coastal trading route with Meatland. Feenheim, a mythic elven kingdom said to exist in the river-rich land during the Age of Dreams, but now inhabited mostly by the descendants of the Bruths. This is a fertile land divided in many parts by a rich east-west river watercourses. Many prosperous Stormlander settlements can be seen here, and they all obey to the three Storm Kings, or Priest Kings, belonging to the three noble clans, Eskla, Njal, and Forvagra, which used Germanis as a way to legitimize their power. Mignirum is a religious center of Feenheim, and the power center of the Urdi Njajal, who is both a storm jarl and a stormy king, and a bricker of Feenheim. This large town hosts the Glasserkall, one of the largest stave churches ever built. The northern border of Feenheim is marked by the Bjarn Bjarnwood, a dangerous forest where trolls wander, and which is in ancestral times was connected with the Wild Heart. North of the forest, there is the Ice Peak Mountains, whose rock is so hard and whose landscape is so inhospitable that no dwarf has ever managed to build a colony there. Njold. The Stormlanders in Njold are divided people. Those who inhabit the countryside define themselves as children of Bruin, using the name of the mythic ancestor who led his people here. They are savage and varied in their cultures and religions, but inhabit the wildlands and forests and mountains on the side of the Troll Bridge, where every settlement is isolated. On the other hand, the Stormlanders on the coastline are more civilized and connected to the other Stormlanders. Norddanes traditionally meet in seasonal markets organized at nearby religious sites, rich in monoliths and other monuments belonging to the ancestral cults. The Gerbanians have colonized these markets, building stav churches and on the ancient sites, trying in this way to more properly convert Norddanes to Gerbanis. The merchant-ruled city of Fingsal is among the main harbors in this land and a center of trade with Midland, especially with Dranvold. Vortland. The descendants of the Kremers dominate this country, which is also the center of Gerbanis faith, since the Pater sits in Stormrock. This city is a marvel to see, rising as a granite spear from the plains. It is here, in this company, that the epics of Gerban developed, and to be Gerbanian is an important part of the Vortlander identity. Here, the Stormcelts are more important than clan chieftains or jarls, as it is also land filled with history and memories. The exiled Thronelanders here found King's Call, whose runes still impressed travelers whose stories are still sung in sagas. There is a strong connection between Vortland and Finheim, as the two peoples are often allied, given how important the Gerbanin faith is in both societies. Wildland. This is a vast land in the northernmost Stormland, inhabited by the descendants of the Agras and the Wildbrunn, who colonized it. Wildland is both a land rich in millenary history as well as the eternal frontier, where humans cannot hope to completely tame the savage nature of the north. The Hagtorn king once ruled here when the Wildland was known as the Copper Kingdom. But due to its vast copper mines, which nowadays are almost completely exhausted, today the land is ruled by various Fylkjarls who meet together at the Fylkthing to decide about common problems, which usually every clan and family rules its own lands usually every family rules their own lands as they please. The council meets in Storhaven, which is the main harbor of Wildland. The city is ruled by an independent sword jarl, not bound to obey any specific Fylkjarl. Westmark. The lands of the West, known as Westmark, are ruled by the great Virans. Westmark is a realm of wisdom and knowledge. Its people are not short of great heroes or strong armies, but the Virans do not value such things as highly as the Meatlanders and Stormlanders do. In the beginning, they were just a quiet fishing people who wished for nothing else than to be left to themselves in peace, far away from any unrest or conflict. But this was long ago, before Gave came to the people of Westmark. That was a time of darkness and despair, a time when the people of Westmark were thrown into shackles and marched into the north, never to be seen again. This was an age when trolls barbarians, and wild folk ruled over the lands of the West, and the peaceful Virans were enslaved by their evil. When Virans tell of this time, they call it darkness before the One, and as such, it was that the One that indeed came that day. Ciro Verte was a crownless king, a man from a knightly family. He looked out at the lands around him and didn't see the Westmark that he knew and loved. He wished for nothing more than to free his people from these evil masters. So he swore on that day never to rest his head or lay down his blade until the trolls were undone and the wild folk were driven back to the mountains. And so Ciro went forth and fought his wars all across the lands. What began as small skirmishes here and there soon developed into great clashes between armies of thousands and in open fields by moats of castles. More and more came from all over Westmark to join Ciro Verte in his conflict, and time again, he was victorious. It seemed as if no foe could slay him. It was whispered that Ciro was sent by a divine being, for he had spoken of visions that showed him how the One would arrive and finally defeat the darkness. All this turned out to be true, as one day this deity came down from the blackness above and, with Ciro Verte, undid the darkness and drove evil back to the pits from whence it came. This god's name was Gave, and he blessed the Virans and as his children. Since that day, the people of Westmark have been strong and united under the tenets of need and the one true God, Gave. Westmark is the home of knights, great rulers, philosophers, and holy men. It is a place driven by knowledge and war. The influence of Westmark is widespread, and its religion, the tenets of need, is perhaps one of the strongest in Trudvang, as it daily converts new followers to its teachings. The countries that make up the core of Westmark are Silvtrodder, Bicent, Kolron, Virano, Thronland, and Vistergolp. Falj, that lies to the north of the Silvtronder, and Thorkal that lies to the south, have more in common with the wild folk, and are therefore counted among their lands, even though the Virans themselves consider Falj and Thorkal to be parts of Westmark. The tenets of need. The tenets of need revolve around the one God, Gave. He is the true All-Father, the creator of the world and of all living things. He came from the nothingness but before even he was shaped, and from the nothingness he separated light from darkness, and that which was from that which was not. He is the One, almighty and all-seeing. Those who follow the tenets of need believe that Gave is the only true God, and all other deities should not be recognized as anything but simple but powerful nature spirits, or, in some cases, dark entities that can be likened to demons. Those few who, to some extent, recognize the existence of gods from other religions see them as minor deities on a much lower level than the divinity of the one Gave. The Virans believe that they are the chosen people, that they were once angels beside Gave and are thus, to some extent, divine. They believe that the angel blade, shoulder bones, bear witness to the wings that they once wore before they fell from grace. In the end, they will be lifted by Gave as long as they remain true and walk by his side. Okay. Okay, up by his side. They believe the reason other creatures have similar bones is that they too can adopt the one Gave and become his servants. If you live your life free from blasphemy and heresy, you will be lifted up by the one. If you do not, you will be cast down into the darkness. The Virans of Westmark form their society around their religion. To a great extent, many wars and battles have been fought in the name of the One, trying to convert other peoples to the tenets of need. The Great Blood Crusaders are spoken of with fear across all of Trudvang. For instance, many parts of West Meatland have been converted to follow Gave and his teachings. Many holy men in Westmark hold great power. Greatest of them is the Ovis, the spiritual leader of Westmark. People gather in churches and temples to pay tribute and listen to the holy men who, like the Ovis, read the scriptures. The most common ones are the Gavlians, the Neatest Dimwalkers, and the Houthguard. This dedicated holy warrior, which blend the otherwise secular knightly traditions with a fanatic cult of Gave. These men are thought to be spokesmen for Gave, shepherding the people into the light and away from the darkness. This power is not only to be used to lead people into light, but also to be used to imprison those who live in darkness and torture blasphemers and punish heretics. Gave. He is the One. Gave is the creator of the world and all that dwell upon it. He is the light, and his judgment is swift, just, and absolute. In the time where everything was nothing and there was neither beginnings nor endings, Gave was first. Deep within the void, he sprang from the expanding nothingness. He separated light from darkness, that which was from which was not. And he found that he wielded power over creation itself. He crafted everything from nothing, and he brought into existence the first beginning. Ciro Verte's vision revealed to him that Gave was nailed on a dark oak by the works of demons. This is the reason why both men and women among the followers of the tenets of need braid their hair, as the braid symbolizes the branches of the tree that Gave died to save, on which Gave died to save them. Let's see. Knowledge and salvation were spread from Gave's blood on the oak tree, and all believers know how Gave came back from the dark realms of the dead to save his people. Gave the One is the central figure in the tenets of need. As his title implies, the only God, and therefore the entire religion, is centered around him. In fact, the entire world is centered around him. For those who follow the One believe that other religions are not in fact religions, but rather obscure traditions, or perhaps even outright blasphemy, centered around supernatural beings like Stormy or the other dark deities of Herminges, which are certainly not gods, but only inferior spirits born from darkness. On the other hand, life and death circles around only around Gave, for he made it so. Simag, the false prophet and the archenemy of Gave. Simag is the most powerful demon that has ever existed, cast aside by Gave in the time when humans still bore wings. He despises the One and all that he loves. She wishes to corrupt his creation, which is why she spreads her dark seeds all across the world, always carrying a bag filled with seeds of evil that she plants within and all that draw breath and can carry out her will. Even the most powerful beings and deities of evil bow before Simag. In her kingdom, Boltheim, legions upon legions march shoulder to shoulder from her fortress of darkness, ready to do her bidding and plunge the universe into chaos. It is not surprising that the crown that sits upon her dark brow is the most prominent symbol of dark and evil in the tenets of need. Westmark's territories. The Virans inhabit numerous lands in the west. This is the core of the tenets of Need's faith, albeit the religion itself is not equally strong everywhere. Virano. This is the cradle of the Needist faith and the home of the ruling Ovis, who sits on his throne in the Irvidor, a city which claims to be the largest in the world, albeit this claim clashes with what others say about Manjord. Virano is one of the mightiest Westlander nations, whose borders on the north is the fierce King's River. The Ovis rules the land, and the present one is called Ovis Sulpi, who has adopted a reclusive political role in today's Virano. But despite this, he is extremely popular, as he is considered to be the holiest man in the world. For centuries, his land has been dominated by Gavlian priests and those brave holy warriors known as the Hrothgard. There is also a complicated system of councils, all subservient to the Needist Church's power. The lands are organized in gesters, groups of related farms and families, each one choosing their representatives to send to the councils. After the curse of Morva, the number of available male heirs had collapsed, which means that many women were taking on, often in unofficial ways, previously unknown positions of power and authority in Virano, something which was inconceivable as centuries ago, and about which many traditionalists complain. Silvtradar. Two important things are reflected in this country's name. The first is silver, whose rich deposits in the Silverspiel Mountains has made Silvtradar rich and prosperous. The second is Rondar, or sigil, the symbol of the knight's law, which has ruled this country since time immemorial. This is in fact the land of knightly houses and knightly orders, all under the leadership of the Silver King, usually chosen from the House Govland, and whose authority over all houses, each one led by a minor Iron Lord. The tenets of Need nicely combined with the local knightly traditions, inspiring traditions of heroic knights and defenders of the people against the evil wildland and wild folk and trolls. The current Silver King is Sang Albend Gavlond, a hero and valiant warrior, strongly allied with the Ovis in Virano. But alas, unfortunately, cursed by a lack of sons and heirs. The royal seat in Silverport, the magnificent white city built in the shining white sandstone, according to some scholars, Silverport rests on the ruins of Perlin, the mythical elven city during the Age of Stars. This is the greater harbor of the northwestern Trudvang, a hub of trade and civilization. Karlon. Three things are well known in Karlong: the ever-present ferns, the widespread use of poison, and the firm law of the tenets of Need. This country is in fact a vassal kingdom to Virano, ruled by a prince who owes direct fealty to the Ovis. The prince commands over 100 elite Hrothgard called Droplords, each one wielding a special pendulum axe as a symbol of their power and authority, and ruling over a number of knights and farms. As part of the system, there are 100 Corlonian Galavians, each one holding a special oak staff and ruling over the monastery. The whole system is conceived to keep the Needist Church strong, and also to collect blood tax, to help spread the word of Gave through either missionaries or war against the heathen wildfolk and the evil trolls. When great blood crusades are proclaimed, Carlanians are always amongst the most numerous participants. Divisions between the rich and the poor are in fact strong here, and the only hope of social ascension for Kolanian serfs is to volunteer as a blood crusader. They are to serve the Ovis in battles abroad, to return 10 or more years later as thiegs or freemen, exempt from paying the blood tax and worthy of full respect, due to having fulfilled their duty to Gave. The current ruler is Prince Chortin, who is only 12. Princess. The current ruler is Princess Chortin, who is only 12 years old. She was raised to the throne too young, as her father, Godshaft, was poisoned 3 years ago. This is the reason why the tyrannical drop lord Gelamir acts as her guardian. They sit in a fortified city of Urkhast, which is at Karlan's heart, resting among the landscape riddled with tunnels, quarries, and mines, from which the Karlanians get stone, iron, copper, salt, and even silver. Throneland, this rugged highland over which wild griffins fly, displays some of the most impressive landscapes in Trudvang. Throneland is the most ancient and long-lasting human kingdoms, and it was founded in the early days of the Age of the Queen. It is partially elven-inspired culture and has been felt throughout this world for centuries, especially with the later Eldfolk and their myths and legends, which shape so much of the Eld tradition in Midland. Thronelanders do not care or know much about the Floras worshipped in Midland, as the Eldfolk did, but what they keep pure is the untouched worship of Hote. The cult has remained unchanged for millennium due to the Thronelanders' love for the Manjaval, the song of the people and the gods, transmitted since time immemorial. All right. Nidus missionaries have never been successful here. Oak churches were built just to be abandoned. The truth is that, even considering momentary conflicts, Virans unconsciously feel a kind of bond with the Thronelanders, as attested by their frequent alliances against common enemies, as demonstrated in the war against the dreaded Cloakmaster 100 years ago. The Throneland is still ruled by the kings of the Hultgau bloodline, whose lives are still long by human standards, but nothing compared to what their ancestors had when the immortal elf blood was diluted in their veins. The incredibly more than 100 years old King Emeric Wutgal still sits on the throne of his ancestors in Ard Kumpu, the heavenly throne, on the Konoknasun, the King's Mountains, and on the other hand, the largest city of Throneland, Urwain, lies in the fertile fields of the Urwi, north of the glowing waters of the Arntenskimmer Lake, whose shores golden fields shine. This has always borne a prosperous center, less ceremonious than the Ard Kumpo, but exploiting the fishing and rich trading routes of the Artenskimmer. Besent, descending from the Kondova and masters of mining, the Besentians live in a divided, sparsely inhabited country east of the Fjaldi River, with no single king or knight ruling them. A loose confederation of elders keeps the many communities of herders and farmers culturally linked. The presence of the occasional neatest monastery or rare Rothgards attests to the alliance with the tenants of need, as well as being the only organized military force with the power to repel centuries-old attacks by the Arks from the mountains. Of the ancient Byzantine dragon knights, not much remains except the House of Avold, whose very few knights still dedicated to fighting worms and wild folk in the sooty mountains, respecting the heritage of the Jurlong Blackbeard. Legends speak of the time of Durlong and his sons, the Dragon Kings, and of how their heirs will one day come back and make Bisant a kingdom again. But as a matter of fact, Byzantians have no alternative but to rely on the Nidus for their protection. Some pockets of archaic cults, possibly linked with the rougher versions of the Eld tradition, still linger in the borders of the country, especially in the Sooty Mountains and along the upper Darken River. But their lives are even harder due to their proximity to the wildfolk and troll threats. Vistergulp. So this land was once green and prosperous until a century ago, when an earthquake and poisonous gases made it similar to the cursed Thokskal. Gavlians have investigated the matter, but at some point they all decided to abandon the land without revealing what they found. Throughout all of Westmark, people have started murmuring that Visselgulp is decayed, as decay reflected its decay reflects some unknown betrayal of Gave. Relationships with Verano are now difficult, as many Hrothgard have started plundering Wistegulp. The few elves who live in the forest and Cantergriff testify about the dusk that has settled over the country and prepare for the inevitable. This is a ruined realm in a constant state of civil war. 4 different noble families have been fighting for Vistergulp since the day of the Gavlians left. Clodvigs, the Huglets, and the Grimolds, and the Herrenstals. This last family was strong due to their traditional alliance with the dwarves in Thermdun. But its leader has been recently murdered. In reality, only the outlaws, known as Robriders, are the real winners in this situation. The fortress in Egald is becoming a dangerous place, as savage Thorkals and even Vintner Weavers have been amassing under the banner of the warlord Svandal, surely planning to conquer the realm. And that's it. So, this was the people and the land. So, sorry, a bit heavy in names, in name dropping. Some of it connected nicely. So here are the designer's notes about inspiration. So I'll just go through these quickly to kind of give you a sense of what they were thinking. So for their inspiration, Stormlanders are definitely inspired by early medieval Norse culture. The Meatlander culture is definitely inspired by old Celtic culture and even the old Welsh. The Virun's culture is a knightly one, but not inspired by the courtly stories or shining armor of the later troubadouric literature. The warriors of Westmark are depicted in a darker hue, reflecting the zeal of maybe early Norman crusaders. The wildfolk may sometimes sound like their names sound like Mongol or generically Central Asian. And the elves are melancholic, always longing for immortal happiness. Their experience with their lost god or fiercely rejecting its memory ensure a stronger link with nature. This was inspired by the Kalevala, the Finnish myth. And then the dwarves are deeply linked with the old Nordic myths, living underground, being masters of runes and craftsmanship. And there are, however, some completely alien traits demonstrated by the Baltic and Slavic influences that they used. So that's why some of the names sounded Eastern European. All right, so that is Trudvang and its people. I guess if you're looking at a map the whole time, which I guess I should have thought of that, it might make it a little more interesting because you can see the places on the map. But we'll go through maybe the classes, for the character classes. Maybe that would be an interesting part for next time. They also, they break down everything. So the way that they combine things, there was a little bit of repetition in the text, but Not bad nonetheless. So yeah, this is all the mechanics of the game that we don't really need. But yeah, here's the explanation of humans and elves. I think we've already gone through most of this. So I'll see if I can find another nice chunk of setting. There are also a collection of stories. That might be something a little more interesting to listen to. There are stories of Trudvang that was a supplementary to one of the campaigns. I have that as a PDF, so maybe we can read that for one of these times. But yeah, I'll go through the book. So check out the flip through. I'll should put the link to the. I flipped through this when I did the unboxing for Trudvang Legends, the board game. If you want to see everything in this book. But yeah, this is just a collection of everything that Riot Minds produced for their RPG, and soon we're going to get a Dragonbane version of this. If this was interesting, there is currently, and you're a 5e player, there is a 5e set of books where you can use the 5e mechanics, 5e rule set to play in Trudvang, if that's interesting to you. I'm curious how they broke stuff up. I guess the stats and everything would work, but I wonder how magic works with this, using this setting. But that's all for tonight. Thank you for listening. And yes, this is it's been fun going over a little bit more Trudvang. So I'll look for some more source to read tomorrow, and hopefully that was a little bit interesting to listen to. You heard some of the names and places that we visited in the board game, and some of the kings that died when we played the board game. But thanks a lot, and I'll see you again next time. Goodbye.